It's time for Carolina basketball to turn over a new leaf, and it starts at the same part of the schedule as where things fell off a cliff last year. Are the Heels ready to prove they're legit? I say yes.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you everydayers for joining us to get your Tar Heels content every single day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Hey, we're having great Carolina conversation all the time on our Locked On Tar Heels Discord group chat. Come join us. The show, the link to that is in the show notes. We'd seriously love to have you come be part of that. It's free. We just chat about Carolina stuff all throughout the day. It's awesome. Coming up on today's show, we are going to be talking about the Battle for Atlantis as a fork in the road moment for the Tar Heels. After that, we're also going to look at how even beyond that, this non-conference schedule is shaping up to be even more dastardly than I had previously thought. And got a really good question actually from someone in our Discord chat about Drake Maye's performance on Saturday and how that might have hurt his stock or, any of that kind of stuff. So we'll get to all that in a little bit. But I want to start by looking at Battle for Atlantis, and we're going to get more into the specific details of the event and the games and stuff like that on tomorrow's show with Coach Pat Kilby. So make sure you tune in for that. But the conversation I want to have right now is this, kind of taking this large historical look at this, thinking back to last year and where we're at right now. I'm calling this tournament this week a fork in the road moment. Why? Last year, the MTE, the multi-team event, PK 85 up in Portland, is where things went awry. Yes, we had already begun to see some chinks in the armor potentially, but nothing really broke through until that 4-game losing streak that started in Portland. So what I want to know for this tournament, for the Battle for Atlantis, is can Carolina turn the page? Can Carolina turn over a new leaf? Can they take a different, whatever analogy you want to use here? This is the moment to prove it. Here's the thing with those games in Portland and then the 2 more losses that came immediately after Portland last year. The first game was against Portland, and that was where we really began to see, like, Carolina won that game, but it was a lot closer and a lot more difficult than it should have been. What did travel play into that? Was it the talent, the collection of the talent? There's a lot of that probably played into it. It was a win, but it was much tougher than it should have been. Iowa State the next day, that was a loss. Carolina lost by 5. They were up by 7 with like 3.5 to go. That's a 12-point swing in the final 3.5 minutes. Carolina should have won that basketball game. Next, we all remember the 4 overtime loss to Alabama on that Sunday, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. That was a clear indication that Carolina didn't know how to and wasn't capable of closing games. There were so many opportunities to win that basketball game, and Carolina just didn't. So that was PK 85, a 1-2 record, but it didn't stop there. That was the beginning of a 4-game skid. Straight from Portland, Carolina flew to Bloomington, Indiana, where they lost their lone double-digit loss of the season at Indiana in the final ACC Big Ten Challenge ever. That was the only one that Carolina maybe just wasn't in and we shouldn't have expected. But then after that, on Sunday, Carolina went to Virginia Tech and lost to the Hokies to kick off ACC play. Now, to be fair, that was an Armando Bacot-less game, and yet you still had a shot to win it, and maybe probably even still should have. But this is where Carolina was at this time last year. That was the next 5 games. So all that means right now is that you've got all these opportunities to flip all that on its head from last year and say, nah, That is not the 23-24 Tar Heels. And it doesn't start with the second game of Battle4Atlantis where Carolina started losing. It starts with Northern Iowa. Because again, that Portland win was much closer than it should have been. So it's time for Carolina to go to work against Northern Iowa on tomorrow, Wednesday, and be like, we're here. Let's put Northern Iowa to rest early and often. And again, Coach Pack and I are going to unpack that in more detail on tomorrow's show, that actual matchup. Here's part of it too. The team I feel infinitely better about. I feel better about who they are as a team. I feel better about the collection of talent on this team. I feel better about the athleticism on this team. I feel better about how Coach feels better about the depth of this team. But there is a issue out beyond Carolina's control that I think contributes to this, and that is the logistical nature of last year's stretch versus this year's stretch. Bear with me. Let's do the journey together. Last year, Carolina went all the way to the Pacific Northwest up to Portland on the clear other side of the country. This year, for that event, that tournament, 3-game tournament, they're just going down to the Bahamas. They're not even changing time zones. And then last year went straight from Portland to Bloomington, Indiana. Did not even come home to Chapel Hill in between. This year, you go from Atlantis and you just come straight back home. And you don't leave because your next game is actually there. And you have a longer layover. Last year, the multi-team event was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This year, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You get a longer layover in between all that. And then last year, whereas you went from Portland to Bloomington, you came home to Chapel Hill, but then off to Blacksburg, Virginia for Virginia Tech for Sunday's game. Instead, it's Bahamas back to Chapel Hill. A little bit of a rest, longer rest. You stay in Chapel Hill to play Tennessee, and then you stay in Chapel Hill some more to play Florida State. The travel that you do have is less than the travel that mirrors each other. And then it's no travel after that. You're done. You're home. You're good. This is completely different on a logistical basis than what Carolina dealt with last year. So I think that side of it is going to put the Tar Heels in a better place. And again, last year, Carolina was so close in these 4 losses. It's literally just, outside of the Indiana game. But it's a rebound here, a made free throw there, one less careless turnover, all of these kind of things. It's a reminder that every single play matters. Every decision matters. You have to do everything as you've practiced and learned and prepared for. And Carolina hasn't had to face that yet this year, but they will now in a big way. And that starts with executing against Northern Iowa tomorrow, and then doing so against either Texas Tech or Villanova, and then either Stanford or Arkansas or Memphis or Michigan on Friday. Carolina just has to do that. This is the time to prove to America, because this is when everyone's starting to tune in during Feast Week. Maui will be over. It ends on Wednesday. This is the premier MTE after Maui is over. Prove to America that you're ready. And I say Carolina is. Yes, the pieces still have to come together. There's a couple things we're watching for with shooting and some other stuff. But the time is now, and Carolina can prove that. Now, the games this week, crazy, tough. But the toughest part of the non-conference schedule is still yet to come. And friends, it is even more difficult than I even thought it was ahead of the season. I already thought it was tough. Now I think it's insanely tough. I want to unpack that for you in just a second. But first, I'm going to tell you that today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. Excuse me. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. It's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And it's so easy to create a free job post. Then after that, you just add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your profile to spread the word to everybody that you're hiring. And then you can use simple tools like screening questions to make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skill set and experience, so you can prioritize who you'd like to interview and then ultimately hire. This is all why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus all the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Want to remind you also that Locked On has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports channel on YouTube. Come check it out. It's going all day long. Make sure you're there. Okay. We just talked some about the Battle4Atlantis schedule in Carolina. Time to flip a new leaf, time to put the nation on notice, time to do whatever you want to call that. But I also now want to recognize and make sure you're all aware that this is even just kind of an appetizer for the of the rest of the non-conference portion of the schedule. Following, Carolina wraps this up on Friday. The next game is Wednesday at home. Again, as we just talked about, it'll be the inaugural ACC SEC Challenge. Who's coming to town? Tennessee. Now, the Vols, I expected to be good, but the Vols are ridiculous. In the last several years, they are phenomenal defensively under Rick Barnes. But I have mocked them mercilessly for their offensive incapabilities. No longer. Why? In big part because of Dalton Connect, the Northern Colorado transfer that we really wanted at North Carolina. He ended up going to Knoxville, and he is just doing work. If you haven't seen it, make sure to check out Tennessee in Maui this week. And gosh, you think about Carolina's schedule. Tennessee's doing Maui and then coming to Chapel Hill. Whew, that's tough, but that's what we're talking about. Right now, as of this recording, Tennessee is 7th at KenPom, 7th in the AP poll, and 8th in the coaches poll. And I still think that might be too low, and I think we will still see them grow and grow in where they're at in the rankings. So there's that. That'll be the Wednesday right after Carolina finishes Battle4Atlantis. The game after that, stay with me. The non-conference game after that, UConn. Carolina goes up to Madison Square Garden, very close to Connecticut, by the way, and will take on the reigning national champions in the Jimmy V Classic. Now, a lot of times you think, oh, man, they've lost several NBA guys, Adama Sanogo. Cool. We'll be in good shape. If you didn't watch UConn against Indiana on Sunday or against Texas on Monday, they haven't missed much of a step. And that's with their best freshman on the shelf right now, Stephon Castle. It don't matter, man. UConn could repeat and not bat an eye at it. They're higher than Tennessee is at KenPom right now. They're 3rd at KenPom, 5th in the AP poll, and 4th in the coaches poll. Ridiculous what they're doing. And Carolina has to play them in short order after playing Tennessee. And then right after UConn, the next game, although I say right after, there's a nice big layoff for finals week. But then Carolina heads down to Atlanta to take on Kentucky in the CBS Sports Classic, this event that they're in every year. Kentucky, better than expected. They're 18th at KenPom right now and 16th in both the AP and coaches polls, just right behind the Tar Heels. They're extremely talented, young, but talented. That 3-game stretch, y'all, and all depending on who Carolina plays Thursday and Friday, that 3-game stretch is going to be tough. But here's the thing. We've been thinking, after Kentucky, there's a nice little break before ACC play starts in earnest. You got the Jumpman Invitational against Oklahoma, and then you got Charleston Southern. Now, Charleston Southern, woefully bad. They're easily the worst team Carolina will play all season long. But Oklahoma is not the gimme that perhaps many thought they would be, myself included. Right now, they're 26th at KenPom. Right now, they've moved up to others receiving votes in the AP poll. They're 36th. By the way, at KenPom, I said they're 26 right now. They started at 48th, so they have been steadily climbing. So that's going to be a difficult game too. Now, you love that from a resume standpoint because you need to go win these kind of games because you're not getting as many quad one opportunities in ACC play. So from a quad one opportunity, you love all these games, but you look at it and you say, ooh, we could drop multiple of those. And you just can't do that if you're the Tar Heels. You need those wins because you just don't have many of them you can get in ACC play right now. And that's tough. And also, by the way, don't forget that Carolina actually kicks off ACC play in between Tennessee and UConn when Florida State comes to town. Now, Florida State is not that great this year. They got waxed late last week by Florida. I mean, it was like 21 points. And Florida's a decent team, but they're not awesome. They're like a middling SEC team this year. So Carolina's got to take care of that too. Like all of that coming together. Now, again, thankfully, after Oklahoma, you do get Charleston Southern before ACC play. But legitimately, you play 11 non-conference games in a schedule. Carolina's played 3 of them. Of the final 8, Charleston Southern is the only gimme Carolina has. Maybe Northern Iowa, but as soon as you look at a team that's just outside the top 100 as a gimme, they're in a game with you and they're gaining confidence with every possession. You cannot do that to Northern Iowa. Everyone else outside of Northern Iowa and Charleston Southern, the 6 non-con games in between those, they're all top 80. And that's just because we're talking about Oklahoma, or including well, I guess I shouldn't include Florida State, so it would be higher than that. Florida State's not included in those final 6 non-con games. So I mean, it is an insane stretch of the schedule that is going to tax Carolina, test this depth that we're wondering and worrying about beyond anything we had imagined. So Carolina folks, I'm just telling you, buckle up, because there could be some rocky moments over the next couple weeks. It just is true. You hope not. You would love to just run this gauntlet and be like, oh, that's what Carolina's about to be. But we just don't know yet because Carolina hasn't yet played anyone at the Power 6 level. So far, it's all been mid-major teams. And that carries on even against Northern Iowa in the first game of Battle4Atlantis. So we're not going to find out much until Thursday and Friday. And then that's back-to-back days and you're off and go, right? So a lot to find out from the Tar Heels. Now, I want to wrap up today's show with a listener question from our Discord. Again, great conversations always going on in the Discord, and had a wonderful question about Drake Maye. And did he cost himself some draft spots on Saturday against Clemson? I'll unpack that more and talk about it and my thoughts about it in just a second, right after I tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Hey, you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill? You can now find in community plays under the promos tab of the app entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community every week. And with the basketball season here, now you can do things like combining a stat total from football and basketball, like Travis Kelce's receptions, LeBron's made threes, and pick more or less than that combination. How fun is that to play? Prize Pick, seriously, it's the easiest and the most exciting way to play DFS. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Here's an example. I was looking through the Prize Picks options for this week. Special discount on Thanksgiving Day. I was looking around through the app, and this is the one I found that I love. On Thanksgiving, Christian McCaffrey's rush yards plus receiving yards is set at 110 and a half yards. But they have severely discounted this thing by 99% to where it's 0.5 receiving and rushing yards combined. It's the biggest no-brainer ever. Go do it. Take the more. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, let's just wrap up the football weekend with a little more talk here. So my friend Emily on our Locked On Tar Heels Discord, she's very active, always engaging in the conversation. I love it. Emily, thanks for being so in. It's so great. So she asked me this question. I think it was over the weekend. She said, quote, if this Clemson squad is a test of Drake's, quote, NFL readiness, quote, it would be good to get your thoughts in chat or in the podcast as to whether his performance in this game should cause a reevaluation as to whether he goes to the 2024 draft or stays at UNC to get another year of development. This is a great question from Emily. My answer, briefly and quickly, is this dude is gone. Like, I would love to think that Drake Maye would love to stay. And Drake Maye would love to think that Drake Maye would love to stay. Mac Brown is not going to let Drake Maye stay. You have heard these kind of stories all the time from like Coach Dean Smith or Coach Williams, when a guy, they'll say, if you are, from all the NBA conversations we're having, if you're a top 5 or a lottery pick guy, you cannot stay. You must go in this draft while the iron is hot. You never know what injury might strike or anything else. So, Emily, I would love for what happened at Clemson on Saturday to have cost Drake Maye to completely fall out of the 24 NFL draft and him be like, I got no options, got to stay in Chapel Hill. This dude's gone. You hate it. And we're going to find out, and we're going to see what it's going to mean and look like and where he'll get drafted, all of that kind of stuff. But my thoughts on it, Drake Maye goner. So, as to like thinking more in depth about reevaluating what we learned from Saturday, the biggest thing for me to consider in these kind of moments is the context of the moment, or the fact that none of these performances happen in a vacuum. Here's part of what I mean by that. The results against Clemson the past 2 years is not a nothing burger, right? But it's not a everything burger either. The Clemson defense is full of NFL bodies, of NFL players, unlike just about anything else Drake Maye will face. The Carolina offense has some NFL guys on it, but not nearly as many as Clemson's defense. It's just a fact of talent and skill and draft evaluation by guys like Mel Kiper and others. And so I want to take what happened at Clemson and say, yeah, I mean, would love for him to have had a better day. But Mel Kiper hasn't suddenly dropped Drake Maye off his draft board. Let's use the case of Sam Howell, shall we? I think that would be a helpful thing to do. His sophomore year. The results after that year, oh man, this dude, Heisman candidate, top 5 in the draft. But as we all remember, things didn't go exactly great for Sam Howell or the Tar Heels his junior year. It wasn't putrid for him, but it just wasn't what he did his sophomore year. And the results ultimately drop him not only out of the first round, but all the way to the 5th round and the 144th pick overall in the 2022 NFL draft. What's the difference? To my eyes, in my opinion, Sam Howell had a lot more NFL quality players around him on the offense his sophomore year. Junior year, not as many. A lot of those particularly skilled position players were gone and out the door after that. So which result do you trust if you're a talent evaluator? How do you evaluate that? What do you look at more? Sam Howell's performance his sophomore year or his junior year? Well, to me, it's simple enough to say, when did he have more NFL talent around him? That's what I'm trusting. Now, ultimately, that's not what happened. Again, he went in the 5th round. So what should you trust? Well, let me just tell you this. There's only one player in the NFL at the time of this recording that's thrown for 3,000 yards this season. His name is Sam Howell of the Washington Commanders. He has thrown for more yards than anyone else in the NFL right now. Now, there are a couple more there. He's not number 1 in yards per game, but he is number 4. Have things been absolutely perfect in Washington for him? Absolutely not. And part of that is the rest of the Washington guys around him. So is Sam Howell perfect? No, but he's not 5th round. That was a miss. I'll continue to say that over and over and over again. So Drake, were things perfect on Saturday at Clemson? By no means. One of his lowest statistical performances of his 2 years in college. Same thing the year before at Clemson. But you got to remember that to these talent evaluators, It is much bigger than just that one-off moment. Because in an NFL game, it's going to be all NFL players on both sides of the football. So all things being equal, how does Drake Maye line up? And you have to try to figure out how to do that with some NFL guys, some non-NFL guys on both sides of the football. And that's tough to do. So all you can do is try to evaluate things the best you can. So with Drake, it's all there. The arm, the smarts, the football IQ, and I'm separating those like just street smarts, book smarts, football IQ smarts, the leadership capability and desire, the you don't have to worry about him off the field, the body, the frame, the scramble ability. He's got everything that an NFL franchise is going to want. Oh, and that ridiculous desire to win at all legal costs. I'll put it that way. Drake Maye is the quintessential dude that you want to get. So at the end of the day, would you rather have Drake dominate Clemson? 100%. Has Caleb Williams of USC also had a couple bad days? And has USC had a bad season? Worse than the Tar Heels? Yeah, all of that is true. But Caleb Williams and Drake Maye just right there at the top of the draft. They're not. There's a couple other dudes with them. But if Drake Maye were to fall outside of the top 5 of this NFL draft, it would shock me to no end. Like, that's just true. And not to mention, I was taking notes for this podcast as I watched Monday Night Football. Who was on Monday Night Football? A Super Bowl rematch of Patrick Mahomes and Mr. Hurts. Pat Mahomes, 177 passing yards, completed 24 of 43 passes against one of the NFL's most elite defenses. Nobody's calling for his job. And just like it, Drake Maye competing against one of the elitist of the elite defenses in college. It's just going to be that way. He found some ways to help his team win. We might even be having a different conversation had Omarion not fumbled twice. You know, like there's all of these things that are compromising factors in a game like this. It's how can Drake adjust to, I'm not going to be able to throw for 8,000 yards today. Jalen Hurts, he only threw for 150 on his side. Yeah, they both had a touchdown pass or two, but they also had picks just like Drake did. That's just what is going to happen. Now, against lesser defenses, which Drake would see in the NFL, he's going to be able to go bonkers. So, ultimately, I'm not worried about it. And I still don't think that Drake will be back. I wish, oh my goodness, I wish that I would be wrong about this. And I will gladly accept it if it comes out and Drake says, yeah, I'm coming back. I wouldn't understand it and it wouldn't make sense, but I would say hooray and hurrah. So, Emily, great question. Thank you so much for that one. Love getting to talk questions that we come up with in the Discord. Folks, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Make sure you're back with us tomorrow as Coach Pat Kilby joins us and does a great job as always. Do come join us in the Discord. Again, the link is in the show notes, audio and video wise. You can email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe, whether you're watching or listening. We'd love to have you do that, and leave the show a review. That really, really does help grow the reach of the show. And so talking about why you love Locked On Heels. Also, smash the like button. We would love to hear your comments on today's episode. Hey, thanks so much for spending part of your day hanging out with me. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Be right back with you tomorrow on Thanksgiving Eve. Is that a thing? We'll find out. But until then, peace.